take my knight, I might get some light squares. I'd be looking for other options of white because I can see how this grabbing the rook could eventually be very, very difficult for white. But a big,
Oh,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm daydreaming there. But it's a big. This is a big moment in this match. Knight b6 probably has to be played in the position, and I guess we'll come back to this one. We're hearing that we're getting a masterclass in a rook ending from I think it's our board too, Salem. So we should probably just have a look at this very smooth game that's played there.
okay. That was that end game that Salam was massaging. I flipped the board up, and this is going to be, I think, our second decisive result of the day. He is up 2 pawns. He's simply up 2 pawns, and both of them are passed. And there's another passer on d5. And earlier on, Black was already in trouble. But if I may rewind to the critical moment, look at the coordination that Salam has achieved with his pieces. Every piece is operating in symphony with the other pieces. The pawn on c6 is under fire, and is it a surprise that in these circumstances Black makes the decisive blunder? Bishop h7, pawn takes d5. What did Black miss? He thought that Salam has to recapture on d3, but no. Rook takes c6 check, of course, wins the second pawn. Then he takes on d3, and 2 extra pawns is more than enough for Salam. Textbook masterclass game.
This is the kind of game you want in the first round against a lower rated player. You want a game where you're kind of dominating, where you don't have any risks. There's no moments where you get nervous. You're always a little bit better, and you're controlling the way the game goes. I mean, you increase in confidence with games like this, and just don't give yourself any heart attacks as well. Saying that, I was having a conversation with English Grandmaster Gwaine Jones a while back, who was talking about these kind of events. He's been 2700 before, and he also said that in the first round he'd often play an opening which he wasn't. I mean, this may be more in open competitions, but he'd play an opening which he wasn't very used to because it'd make him calculate more. Because he wouldn't play on autopilot. Like if you play an opening, you play all the time in round 1 of an open. You're not really thinking. But he would play openings he wasn't that comfortable with because it forced him to calculate straight away, and that would get him warmed up for the other rounds. But still, I say that you don't want to have risky games too much in the first rounds. So very smooth performance there, and I think White will be finishing that game off soon.
Yeah, I mean, Black is just making kind of perfunctory moves, spite moves. I would resign here without question, and I'm a very late resigner. Salam is not going to waste much time. He's just going to push these pawns. Rook h7, clinical move to stop the progress of Black's remaining pawns, paving the way for the decisive march of White's passed pawns. We also had a draw between Lance Henderson De La Fuente, who was unable to convert that better endgame Simon against Adi Ban. So big missed opportunity for the Andorran Grandmaster, who just wasn't confident enough and forced a repetition in a position that he definitely should have continued playing in. So we're getting some results in already as we're about to enter the third hour of play, but all of the top games are still going. Big kudos to the lower rated players for hanging in there.
100%. We'll come back and we'll see how that game was actually drawn quite shortly, but it's now time for another break. So we will have a quick break and then we'll come back and update on the progress of everyone still playing.
So I loved puzzles. I love solving any puzzle you put in front of me. So chess was a natural for my brain. It was the unsolvable puzzle. It wasn't one of those things you just looked at, here's the puzzle, what's the solution? It was a puzzle inside of an enigma, inside of a mystery. Like, what is this game? And there was so much to it. The more you learn, the more there was to learn. So that puzzle solving gift that I had, or desire, wish, I would do crossword puzzles back in the day as well as as a high school kid. Fell in love with New York Times crossword puzzles. I had to do one of those every day that the puzzle came out in the paper. So I always was a puzzle solver, and I think that made it easy for me to transfer over that skill set to chess.
I was here. I was lost. Okay, well, hey.
8, let's go.
Oh no, I think I should have just done that. Chat, I got 14.
We beat it. Let's go. No, 15. Unreal. No, first try. 8 in a row, 9 in a row, baby. Let's go. Let's go. I got a little achievement thing.
I honestly really enjoyed that. That was really cool.
Become a chess.com community streamer at go.chess.com/start streaming.
And Fausti beats the 2 pieces with the rook.
Aaron made a huge investment, giving up his queen for 2 rooks.
Black pawns are still quite fast. I literally have no idea what's going on. Oh no, he's about to lose on time.
Will you resign now? Oh, Patrick still doesn't resign. Patrick, please.
Welcome back to the Fide World Cup in Baku, Azerbaijan, and it is round 1. The action has started. There's over 300 of the best players in the world fighting for some major prizes here. The top 3 players in both the Open and the Women's competition get a place in the candidates, and that is something which every chess player dreams of. And a lot of the big rated players are seeded through to the next round. They got a bye in this one, but there's still some excitement going on everywhere, and some upsets as well, Danya. And where should we start with?
Well, on camera there we have Solemn just kind of sitting back, adopting that universal posture of it is time to resign. You fought well, but at this point you're wasting my time. So I think the handshake is going to happen on the next move after White plays h takes g5 on the position in front of you. So we can depart this game. There we go. There's h takes g5. We're going to get resignation momentarily.
Daniel,
we've been keeping an eye. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but
No, go ahead.
Have you ever been annoyed when your opponent hasn't resigned? Has there ever been a time when you're like, oh, come on, man, just resign. I want to get some dinner soon.
Definitely. I think once or twice. Now, I am a late resigner myself, so I'm very understanding when it comes to, okay, if there's any sliver of hope, you should be able to play. One funny story actually involves my brother. We were both playing in a tournament. Now, he's about 2,100. a little known fact. I'm not the only member of the Naroditsky family who can play chess. So I finished my game, and I was waiting for him to finish so we could go have lunch. And he's got a completely winning position, like up a rook in an endgame. His opponent has 50 minutes on his clock. And his opponent starts thinking in just a meaningless position. He gets up from the board on his own move, which is a very suspicious sign. Like, you don't want to do that. He's gone for 30 minutes, and he comes back with, like, the greasiest and most disgusting half-eaten burger of all time.
Oh, no.
And he sits down at the board and just, as if unfazed, continues to eat while his clock is ticking. It was the most obnoxious thing I've ever seen, and he resigned with maybe 5 minutes on his clock.
That is so rude. That is so rude.
It was just unbelievable. Like, how do people allow themselves behavior like that, you know, as an adult?
So
I get that kids do it, you know.
Yeah, sure. But so he knew he was losing, but rather than resign and let you and your brother go and have a nice bit of lunch, he went and got himself a burger, and he didn't even clean his hands. He wiped all the burger juice over all the pieces left on the board so your brother could get second-hand burger juice.
Imagine shaking hands after that.
Oh,
Imagine the handshake.
Oh, the greasy handshake, the worst kind. You know, I mean, there's the wet fish, isn't there, where they like put their hand out and it's like, what is that? It's the wet fish handshake, but the greasy handshake. Oh no, that's not good. Oh, did anyone say anything to him?
I mean, I think my parents or my dad was also there, and it was just shock. Yeah. It was shock and then anger. You know, there's several stages of
grief,
of emotion, several stages of grief in that moment. But the first is this actually happening? Is this like 35-year-old man actually doing this? And the answer is yes. Now we're entering the territory in this game where I feel like we're borderline knocking on the door of, okay, you really need to resign now.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And there's a couple of ways White can win this one. And you sometimes, I mean, we're not saying you should always resign, even though that's one of my favourite statements. Just resign, get on with it. But you do need to respect your opponent sometimes in a big event like this. And when it's, you know, you need to realise this guy's one of the best players here. And, you know, there's no way I'm not going to lose this. It is time just to resign. I have heard a similar story to you, actually, Dania. In England, where there was two players playing and they hated each other, right? They really did not like each other, and one of them was completely winning, and the guy losing had about an hour and 20 minutes left, and rather than get a burger, he went and had 2 pints of beer. So he went and he disappeared to the local pub. He had 2 pints of beer, and then he came back and he resigned after his 2 pints. So very similar story to you, but instead of a burger, it was beer. Not to be recommended. You got to respect your opponents there. And this game, well, there's only one result's going to be possible. I mean, even without the extra 2 pawns, this is on the queen side. White is completely winning this position. I mean, will he try to play for stalemate? Oh, I don't know. Just resign, my friend. Just resign.
Yeah, this is crossing the Rubicon into like. Yeah, slightly, you know, strange territory because rook takes b4, white plays f7, and this is winning times a gazillion. What's funny is Solomon has 40 minutes on his clock.
He's heard us.
Resignation. He has heard us. He's followed the commentator's advice. Always a bad idea. He will learn eventually.
Yeah. I think that's just on the verge of respectable there. You know, you play on a little bit, you see what happens, and, you know, you get in the right mindset. And I think that was just about okay. Great game, though. From Salem, and a solid start to his journey here. Now, I guess we should go over to another game, of course, and maybe it is worth looking at this game. We're in an ending. Lots of the game's pieces are getting swapped off, but a player I would like to mention is Jules Massard, if possible, Daniel, and maybe we could just have a look at the position he's in, because actually this could be an upset. Well, it will be an upset unless I'm missing something. And Jules is a really strong, dangerous, great player from France, 26.54, and he's playing a player who Runa from, and I may have pronounced that wrong, apologise, from Uganda, 22.23, and at the moment he's defending an ending.
Musard has 0 winning chances. Now, he also, I think at this point, is close to 0 losing chances. And I'm trying to figure out if Black was in fact winning earlier in the game and maybe played a little too conservatively. If we rewind about 8 moves, it was winning for Black, and he was oh so close. He had this endgame, which is completely winning, and all he had to do was make one accurate move, knight to e3, and with a 95% certainty, he would have won the game against Jules Musard, because rook f2 gets checkmated to rook e1. White has to play the miserable rook b1. Black just starts chopping everything off the board. Simon, this is completely winning. I mean, just total domination. Black just starts pushing this kingside pawn phalanx down the board. Instead, one inaccuracy. He started by playing rook takes b2, allowing Jules to get his knight active. This looks winning for Black, but Musard was able to activate his rook, bring the knight back, and tie Black down. Rook a3 maintained winning chances, but I just feel like it's so understandable. He sensed how close he was to winning. He wanted to eliminate all risk, and as a result, unfortunately, he's going to miss a chance to score the victory of a lifetime, but not taking anything away from him. This is still going to be the draw of a lifetime for Haruna Nsubuga from Uganda.
Yeah, very good play from Haruna, and he must be happy with the way that he's played. Obviously, it's going to be a bit disappointing to realise you missed the win. I mean, I think we've all been in that situation where we know we're winning. We get a little bit excited against the higher rated player, and we start our brain starts going to goo. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to take the first pawn I see. I'm not. You know, you lose that focus, and this is why I think as a junior, one of the best bits of advice I was ever given was never ever offer or take draws. You know, I didn't actually follow this rule particularly well, but that made me fight on and made me lose position sometimes where I was a lot better. But in the end, you have to find the correct continuations in promising positions. Good bit of advice there for anyone trying to get better. This ending, it's going to be a draw. Black has the extra pawn, but 4 versus 3 is normally a draw. And I think if White even just doesn't do anything here, Black can't really break through. I mean, obviously you should play on as Black here. You got the extra pawn. There's no reason to agree to a draw. And Daniel would probably win this position 99% of the time in bullet chess, at least. But it's not really any chances here against someone as technically good as Jules.
Yeah, Jules can just curl up into a ball here, and Black can continue to trade pawns, but even that doesn't really afford Black any additional winning chances. In bullet, this is completely winning, because actually the reason isn't even the extra pawn. It's what the extra pawn gives you. It gives you complete king safety. You park your king on g7. You never have to worry about lateral checks, and then you just use your rook to milk a lot of time off your opponent's clock. Then at the right moment, you start advancing your g-pawn and posing too many problems for White to deal with only a few seconds. But Jules Musard is going to hold this. He's going to have a tough game tomorrow with Black, and definitely a chance for Nsubuga if he plays the same way with the white pieces. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah, so very good result there for the player from Uganda. And okay, well, just trying to catch up, see if there's any action. We love tactics, so if you spot any tactics at home, please do let us know. And while we have a think about that, maybe we should just look at this game where Adiban managed to get the draw there, because we were saying, Adiban's position is really bad and White's got everything he wants, but there's not much more to see there. So I saw you brought up another game there, Daniel, as well, but there's a very strange decision from White here. I mean, Lance had played a great game, got a very good position, and he forces the draw.
Terrible decision by Lance de la Fuente, and the reason he forced that draw, I think, has to do with a little bit of panic that he felt when, after bishop h6, rook f6, bishop g7, he assumed, I think, that the rook is trapped and that the game is almost over, and it must have been a psychological blow to face the move rook to f7 And the point is after knight f7, king f7, suddenly black is going to recover the exchange. But here's the crazy thing, Simon. Even here, after bishop h6, bishop g4, you go king d3. You don't want to go king f2 and walk into another check, but you can go forward. And this endgame is still incredibly nasty for black because black's position is riddled with pawn weaknesses. White is not risking at all. But forget all of that. Instead of going for the exchange, in this position, you could have dropped the bishop back to g5, gotten the initial position that you started with, just make a slow move. Play h4, right? Play b3, improve your position, enjoy your life. Black is essentially paralyzed, and you can always secure this bishop with h4, taking the sting out of bishop e7. You're playing a World Cup, you have a big opportunity, and I really feel like Adiban might make Lance pay for this tomorrow, because Adiban with white really is a beast.
Yeah, agreed. With the white pieces, he has so many aggressive ideas, and we were discussing this on the Champions Tour, this kind of thing, Dania, that when you sort of agree a draw, and you shouldn't agree a draw, it's like the chess gods will punish you. Yeah, they're like, you kind of know that you've got to play these positions on. You know, it's a knockout competition. It's what I said earlier about never agreeing a draw. You've got to fight, and you lose a bit of your sort of, you could even say karma, if you believe in that kind of thing. You get punished. It often just doesn't work well. Play until the bitter end, and taking a draw here. Maybe Lance just didn't realise how good his position was. That's the only thing I can think of here. Maybe he saw the two bishops and he thought, okay, my opponent. You can often talk yourself in a pessimistic way out of realizing how good your position is, right?
Especially when nerves are playing a role, and you start justifying. Listen, I'm slightly lower rated. This is the first game I've ever played in a World Cup. There's this restaurant that's open till 8 p.m. and it's already 7, and I'll make it there. There's so many different avenues that you take when in your mind you've already made up your mind to take that draw. But we've all been through this experience of coming back to the hotel room, firing up our laptop, turning on Stockfish, seeing that plus 1.5 or plus 2 evaluation. I remember I had a game against Eric Hansen in the last round of the Reykjavik Open where, similar scenario, I talked myself into the draw. I opened up my laptop, and when I looked at that position from my hotel room, it was like a completely different position. I could not conceive of why on earth I had accepted that draw. I was positive that I would have won the game if I had just made 1 or 2 accurate moves, and I saw them. Just amazing how your mind plays tricks on you within the framework of a tournament situation, and how different it is from the comfort of your warm, comfortable hotel room at the Marriott.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's sometimes the case when you're commentating and when you're playing. I mean, when I'm playing, or when I, like let's say even Title Tuesday and chess.com, I'm missing such basic tactics. As soon as I stop the game and I have a look at the position, you just see them in a second, right? You have to look at things occasionally from a different perspective, a different view, from afar and from near, just so you see clearly. And when the tension is high, as you say, you can talk yourself out of the right evaluation, and it might be a good point if you're about to take the draw. Just before you do that, just have a breath, maybe go and have a walk and just ensure yourself that that's what the right result is to do there. And I think that's a big opportunity missed for Lance in that position, because he will have black in the next game against the ever dangerous Adiban. And okay, how is Lauren getting on here?
Not as well as I thought he was a couple moves ago. This is very much a competitive game, particularly given the time situation. Laurent is down to 7 minutes for 12 moves. White has 2 minor pieces for a rook and 2 pawns. So from a material standpoint, it's a balanced situation. But black has a very big positional problem, which is this pawn on a6. What that means is anytime the queens are traded, white's got a very clear plan of situating the rook on d6 and going after the a-pawn. The knight is actually a beautifully placed piece. It's both defensive and potentially attacking. And Fressinet has just traded queens. I think he wants to go rook c8 and try to get this rook to the second rank, but objectively, I don't think white is worse in this endgame.
No. That A pawn is a major target, isn't it, for the white pieces here? And the evaluation bar confirming that this position is really unclear at the moment. And the current position also, Fresnay is lower on time. He's only got 7 minutes left. He's got to be a little bit concerned here about how things are going. His opponent is another player I don't know, or also haven't heard of, from Algeria. Looks like a very underrated player. But white's got to deal with some problems of that. Well, for example, that black rook infiltrating into the position here. As white, do you want to generally keep a pair of rooks on, or do you want to exchange a pair of rooks off? That's the first thing I'm thinking, because if I want to exchange rooks off, maybe I just move my king to the center and I block the check with my rook. But I think in a general sense, you want to keep the rooks on if you're white here, but maybe that's just not possible because black's rooks are too active.
I think this is a great instance of the specifics of the position trumping general considerations, which do dictate that you want to keep an additional pair of rooks on the board as the side with the minor pieces, because the rook, what it has over the minor pieces is this ability to trampoline from one side of the board to the other. So if you have a rook, then that particular role can be filled by your lone rook. But what is the particular factor that proves the exception here? It's the fact that after king e2, I'll make the moves on the board. If the rooks get traded, black will actually have a very hard time defending the a6 pawn. Well, how does that unfold? First of all, you can't win the a pawn because white can permanently defend it with the bishop. And then the knight has a beautiful pathway to c5, unstoppable. And I don't even see a way for black to get the rook to a8. But even if you're able to do that, white's king is going to come up and black is going to be confined to completely passive existence. The big other problem, Simon, is that black has the 4-on-2 majority, but it's going to take, 40 years for black to actually set those pawns in motion. By the time you do that, the World Cup is going to be ending, and you're definitely not going to have that a6 pawn.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it could be that Lauren, well, I don't know if he's in trouble, but he's got to certainly be careful in this position. It's an unbalanced position, and the main issue is his a6 pawn. That a6 pawn is a target for a long time, and this simple move, a king e2, looks like at least a backup plan that you can play. Get your king to a safer square. You might want to centralize your king and then bring your rook to attack the a6 pawn at the right time. So of course, king e2 is an option. And there was another line there actually. After king e2, rook c2 check. Mm-hmm. Maybe just king e3 is just a good move, right? As well, because of the back rank problems. Is that right?
Or even king d1. How crazy is it that you can hit either rook?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. You don't even have to calculate rook d2. Oh, that definitely then you go king e2. Black probably has to waste a move then on creating luft for his king. White plays, I don't know, bishop b6 maybe, just to set up that knight c5 idea. And probably for black, you actually are the one that wants to keep both rooks on the board, because if you keep both rooks on the board, you're able to effectively prevent the knight from jumping into c5, and you're able to keep the status quo. And that's why the eval bar is all zeros, I think, because you get a situation where essentially neither side is able to make easy progress. Okay, in the meantime, rook to d4 has been played by white, but he's overzealous. He's trying to force it, Simon, and he's given black's rook a golden ticket to the second rank, because after the rooks are traded and black's rook jumps into c2, the b2 pawn is going to preclude white from engineering the ideal setup and winning the a6 pawn.
I totally agree. It's very tempting to try and force the situation, but this move is allowing black's rook on that open file to become much more active than it should be, and any little thing that you give away is a concession, and this move is going to allow black to get very active with his rook, so it could now turn again in Lauren's favour. Even saying that, I know the evaluation bar really likes black here, but the simple plan that you've pointed out of going for the A pawn, using the white knight to go for black's pawn on the left hand side, is always going to be a race situation. So if you're in Lauren's position, you realise that white's going to win that pawn, and you're going to have to calculate incredibly carefully with under 6 minutes. You don't really want to be in a race situation against someone who's much lower rated than you, 400 points lower, because you could lose. Okay, and this position, I expect Lauren will move in with the rook, and he may start taking control. I'm also hearing, just so you know, Dania, that if you remember that game, let me get this right, and it was the very interesting Sicilian game with Dante. Yes. And Dante was playing against Saric, yeah. I'm hearing that maybe Dante could even be better in that game. I'm not sure if that's true, but another game we could catch up on at some point.
Absolutely. Let's go there next. I just wanted to make one final observation, which is that definitely white sees rook c2, but what he might have missed is that after rook c2, knight c5, black has this move e5, unchaining the bishop from the knight. The bishop is overloaded, actually. That's the problem. It has to keep b2 protected. It has to keep c5 protected. And black's b-pawn is, unfortunately for white, a lot faster than the a-pawn. Great stuff by Laurent Fressinet, not panicking in time pressure, and he is now very likely to win the game. Such a good case study of how specific factors influence the evaluation. You just cannot make any conclusions on the basis of general rules. Everything depends on where the pieces are located, whose move it is, and the particulars of the piece placement and the variations at this level. Okay, let's go to the Boykas-Saric game, where black is down in exchange currently. Both sides in severe time pressure, particularly Dante. But yeah, he's doing pretty well here, Simon. What's going on in this position?
Quite a lot by the looks of it. I mean,
yeah. What's not going on?
What's not going on? I mean, at least the queens are off. I mean, the first thing to do in any situation like this is to just count the material, and a quick count can tell us that white has the extra exchange, so white is material up. But we can also see black's minor pieces, knights and bishops, are very, very active. And it is now white to move. Any result, I'd say, is possible here.
100%. Knight c4 is the last move. Black obviously has very significant compensation for the exchange in the form of great piece coordination and lasting pressure on white's manifold pawn weaknesses. The bishop is currently hanging. Dante has to drop it back. But I'm not sure what black's next move is after bishop f2. You obviously cannot take on c5. It's bad positionally, but it also fails due to a check on d8. How do you think Ivan is going to improve his position? Is he just going to start pushing his kingside pawns up with something like g5 or maybe something like king f7? Just tossing the ball back into white's court, which can be very unpleasant when you've got only a couple minutes for 8 or 9 moves.
Yeah, agreed, actually. I mean, I think if I was black here and my opponent's short of time, you don't always want to force the situation, because if you force the situation, you make your opponent play good moves, and it's that sort of saying where you allow them to make mistakes. And I think the idea of using your pawn majority, gaining space on the king side with like g5, king f7, king g6 makes a lot of sense. Those pawns that black has on the king side, at some point they could take a lot of territory and even become a pass pawn. So I very much like that idea, just asking white, how are you going to improve? I've got obvious ways to improve my position. And I think the biggest thing that a lot of players can do in order to improve their chess around, I don't know, like the 1600 rating, which is a very common rating in improvers, is to get into the habit of working out their opponent's plans just as much as their own plans. Because most people will concentrate on their own plans and kind of forget about their opponent's moves. And if you realise your opponent doesn't have many good moves that improve his position, then again you can allow him to make mistakes, and you bring that big factor into the game of chess. And that's why I think G5 is an excellent move here, as you rightly pointed out, Daniel.
It is, and Dante's time is just dwindling. It's crazy how your last 5 minutes seem to evaporate so much faster than your first 5 minutes. And White's rook is stuck on d4. It's got no squares. I mean, I would be contemplating an exchange sack on d6. That's the first move that came to my mind. But Black doesn't even have to take. Black will play king f7, and I think the time situation might be the factor which tips the scales, practically speaking, actually in Black's favor. So I like the way that Sarge has handled this endgame. He's garnered himself winning chances, and Boykus will have to be very precise for the next couple of moves. But still, Simon, I think that the lower-rated players have acquitted themselves very well thus far. A lot of games that are really coming down to the wire. One game that's not coming down to the wire is Gadir Guseinov's game. If we could go to that one really quickly, I think we might get a result there in the span of a couple moments, because there's checkmate that is on the horizon. Wow. And White's losing on time.
Oof. How did that king get all the way there? I mean, I know you want to use your king in the ending, but maybe not as much as this. And White, 15 seconds to go. There is a threat of that bishop, as you pointed out, just sliding in with checkmate. This seems to be the only way to defend it, but I don't think the White king is going to survive much longer here, is it?
No, king g7 is going to end the game. It's a simple move. You just prevent White's king from running to f6. He's already played it, and bishop c7 is mate. Yeah, you got to go bishop d5, but then f6 and bishop f7. There's like 600 different mating constructions here. It's over.
Nice finish. King safety important, and there were some bit of nervous moments for Black in that game, but actually the decisions that were made were very clever decisions. I think when he maybe missed this knight d4 option earlier on. So we expect resigning or a loss on time. Are we going to see it? 9 seconds. Okay, he's played bishop d5. The only way to stop checkmate.
f6.
And yeah, he's going to play f6, isn't he? I wonder if we see. Yeah.
Both players know exactly how this game is going to end, but White still needs to go through the motions because you're not down any pieces yet. And at this point, White's not thinking about a move because there's only one move. He's thinking, do I resign now? Do I resign after bishop f7, or do I wait for Black to capture my bishop? Which is probably the path he's going to go down.
There we go. Winning a piece, winning the game. Be nice to see resignations on the board. It's going to be a tough game. There you go. Okay, and we see the end of that one. So another game down.
Indeed.
Maybe we could have a look what's happening on the top board today, and that's Cheparinov, who had this Tarrasch. We could potentially see how things are going on. That was actually a good game there, and a nice victory in the end. Let's see how Cheparinov's getting on. You can see a lot of the games already finished.
Yep.
And what's happening here? It looks a bit of a crate. I mean, my first glance at the position, whoa, look at that pawn. It's gone a long way. But is the pawn just getting surrounded?
Well, it is, but great defensive move by Black on his last seconds. He's down under a minute for 6 moves. White is currently up a pawn. That's basically all that I have concluded from my careful examination of the position. What's going to happen here is, I think, a move like rook c2. Black is going to win back the e5 pawn, but he's going to lose the d2 pawn in return, and White's going to get this 2-on-1 on the queen side. Should be a technical win for Cheparinov. Obviously, White has to be very careful, and White will have to play f4 first in order to avoid the knight fork on c4. But I think Cheparinov has no way to keep this pawn protected. Actually, he could play f4, Simon. I'll be honest. I thought knight takes b2 was a threat, but it occurs to me that that's merely a trade. So Chepa might want to go f4 here and get a little bit greedy.
Yeah, if you can get away with being greedy, then you should when you're playing chess. Greed is good in the game, and the knight on d1, Cheperinov's only knight, does a great job of stopping black's threats here, stopping that pawn on d2. So it should be going the right way for Cheparinov. He's using his time correctly here, and black still putting in a good performance though. I'm trying to find some, I like a bit of attacking chess as much as you can, Daniel. We're getting to the time control here. Seems like someone's about soaring something like a tree down outside my window as well, so I apologise for that. But if you hear soaring noises, there's not an operation going on, thankfully, I think, as far as I know. But one game which is looking quite interesting, maybe we could go there for some tactics. It's not sure what board it is, but it's actually the problem-solving world champion on numerous occasions, Kasper Piolrun from Poland. And he's playing Pablo, and the game's really heating up there. White is just throwing everything at the Black King in that game, and with the time situation, well, this could be a bit of an upset. Look at the Black King.
Look at the Black King. It's wide open. It's easy to look at. It's hard to look at, depending on which side you're rooting for. White is, I want to say, completely winning. He's also up a pawn, which is not helping Black's cause at all. This has just been a destructive tactical effort by the international master, young international master from Argentina. These are the most dangerous players in the World Cup. These 2490 IMs that you've never heard of, but are incredibly good and very young and hungry. And there is several beautiful tactical operations here that can be conducted. Actual operations, not just the cutting down of a tree. I would start, Simon, with a check on g5 here. Force the king onto a compromised square. And then there's always going to be, I think, a sack on e5, followed by something like f6. Something's going to manifest itself, and you don't want to let black hang in the game and make time control if you're Acosta, because that might have cost him.
Like it. And that was a nice... Can we show that on the board, that one, Daniel? Because that was a nice combination. I like that check. And maybe the Black King shouldn't go in the corner, but if it does go in the corner, it's really getting itself in a rather unsavoury situation. And I love the way you're just blasting through with this f6 move. And I like the way you move that as well. Is that how you'd move the pawn if you were doing it, just to rub it in your opponent's face? Would you get it and go, ooh,
I want
like Harry
to make
Potter?
Sure I don't have to get facial reconstruction surgery, so like I would avoid screwing the pieces in. It's like Yasser's famous story with Garry Kasparov screwing in the pieces. But that was one possibility. He has played a different move. By the way, easy to blunder your queen here. There's a lot of knights kind of hanging around the vicinity of the king side. He's gone queen e8, but that is very inaccurate because black can shut down, or at least partially shut down the diagonal with the move d4. And we know what happens when you let these top guys hang around and hang around. Suddenly, the position starts to get harder and harder to win. After d4, white might be relying on e takes d4, but after e takes d4, Simon, there's this very nasty idea of bishop to c3, and suddenly a lot of white's pieces are starting to get beaten back.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. And that last line just seemed so natural, didn't it, to keep the lines open and just try to keep the things flowing. So I was just picturing there, what I would actually do if I was having in a very tense situation and I made a blunder and my opponent did start moving the pawn like that. Or, there's many different styles, and people, I think, forget about playing actually over a physical board, how things are different compared to playing with a mouse, right? Because when you're playing with a mouse, when you're playing online, you don't see the opponent. But you mentioned this thing about Garry Kasparov screwing the piece into the board yet, and you've got all these different techniques of how people move the pieces. And, what Garry Kasparov used to do, if he played a really good move, he'd put the move on the board, but then just to show it is really good, he would
just gotta make sure it doesn't slip away from the square,
He just, really that's such a good move. And he just literally shows opponent that piece is going to stay there. But then you've got other people, you've got the, that's a screwing move. And you've got the, people who just hop, they hop their pieces in. That's really off-putting. There's loads of weird techniques. Have you ever faced someone who turned the knights backwards when they're playing you? That is a horrendous habit. So you've got the actual knights. Most people put them forwards or sideways. And in a game over the board, you're not supposed to touch your opponent's pieces to adjust them, shadow them. But I had one guy, and he turned his knights so they were facing backwards. And I'm like, what can I do? Can I turn them around? You're not supposed to do that. I can't play against these knights. They look so stupid. And it annoyed me for the whole game, Daniel. Have you ever faced that?
Never faced knights backward, thankfully, because I would have to adjust the knights every single move. I myself have changed. I used to be a forward-facing knight preference. Now my knights face the side, but they have to face the same side. If they face different sides, I start, the OCD inside of me starts to flare up. But definitely, knights facing backwards is a huge no-no. There's many ways to make moves. There's also different ways to press the clock. I was discussing with my friends how some players, they make too much of an effort. I mean this negatively. This is a slightly annoying attribute. Players who spend too long trying to make sure that they make as quiet of a sound as possible when they press the clock. So they'll almost press it from their opponent's side of the... They'll just, make the craziest hand motion to emit the lowest decibel level. It's okay. You can press the clock. I like the sound of the clock press.
Yeah, but also there's the opposite side of that, and I was playing an English Grandmaster, and it was in the British Championships, and every move he played, and it wasn't even that short a time, he basically thought the clock was like a punching bag, and he would slam it as hard as he can so that everyone would jump out of their chair. And I had to say something. I said, I basically said, I actually just leant over and I just said, do you have something against the clock? Because he was literally trying to destroy that poor clock, and it was jumping around. So you've got all these little things, these factors when you're playing over the board, which actually make things quite exciting as well. But maybe, I do miss playing over the board. I need to get back to the action at some point, I feel.
You do. So. No, it makes it so exciting. As White continues to contemplate this new set of challenges, I want to go, we're getting tons of results that are coming in. This is that part of the broadcast where we're going to get, a lot of games falling like dominoes. The Turkish GM Vahap Sanal defeated his senior opponent, Croatian Zdenko Kojul, with the black pieces. But the game I want to get to next is that Harsha Barakoti game, which is entering the... Oh, my bad. Sorry about that. Let me pull up that game once again, which is entering the all-out time scramble phase. Now it's Ponsalaya, who has joined his opponent in time pressure land, and Simon, Black's position is completely lost from an objective standpoint.
Wow. Can we have a look what happened? I mean, because we can maybe go through the moves very quickly, because obviously it's a very interesting part of the game, but this has been one of the most exciting games so far, and we saw the White Knight coming into e6, didn't we? And did Black sacrifice after that Knight came in? Because it was, very exciting.
He did, and let's just wait for Harsha to make a move, and then I'll rewind really quickly.
Yeah.
He's done it. Okay, obviously there's a little bit of a delay. Rookie won best move in the position because he can block a check on f3 with this very important resource, Queen g2. So really quickly, he did in fact play knight b6. So he sacked the exchange. That sacrifice was accepted with a delay. Here there was e takes d3, and another mischance by Ponsalaya. He had to take the bishop, and look at that dark square domination that he would have had he taken on d3. Instead, he takes the knight, gives White the bishop pair, and gives White dark square control, and also gives White massive queenside pressure. Ponsalaya puts all of his pieces back. Suddenly, he's dealing with irresolvable challenges on the queenside because a5 is unstoppable, and he's got nothing going on the other side of the board. White just plays a5, not fearing the empty check on f3, securing the loot, dropping the queen back, and he is within a couple of moves of consolidating and winning this game, a game that Levon Ponsalaya absolutely should have won on the board, on the clock, etc., but there is one hurdle for White to cross. He has to find rook g2, queen f3, and then this quiet move, king to g1, And I think that will end the game.
Yeah,
and he did.
I mean, the Black Knights are really bad position. They're awfully placed here. Neither of the Black Knights can find a good way in or anything to do. And how would you, in this World Cup, what makes it so exciting is it's 2 games, right? So you lose the first one, you have to win the second game. And as the tournament progresses, each match is going to get closer and closer. They're going to be very closely fought. And if you lose a game like that, and this is a general question, I suppose, Dania, how do you cope with it in a tournament? You lose a game you should be winning, the most painful kind of loss, but you've got to play another game the next day. Do you personally have any secret things you do? Do you go for a walk? Do you drink a bottle of vodka? What do you do, Dania?
My coping strategy for these kinds of games was always a horror movie. It was a tradition. Nice. I would always take my mind off, do something radically different that doesn't involve chess and that takes your mind off of, the pain that you're experiencing. So it was always specifically a horror movie because they're captivating, and you would enter a different reality and forget about the one that you're inhabiting for a bit. Anything that gives you perspective and allows you to just chill out is really important. So Levon will have to tap into whatever that mechanism is for him. And it's different for different people, but you have no time to wallow because tomorrow you have another game, you have to win it, and you have to be so psychologically strong. The best World Cup players are the ones who have proven their mettle in these exact types of situations.
You've got to have that bounce back ability. I mean, all the top players, right, they're able to come back stronger the next day. You mentioned horror films. I do love a good horror as well, Daniel.
Nice.
And I really like horror films, actually. I watch them all the time. Do you have a favourite one, just out of interest? Putting you on the spot there. I'll give you a bit of time to think about it.
So many that I that I love. I'd have to go The Conjuring, maybe, of recent movies that I've watched.
Classic good film. I do like the paranormal ones as well. It is, yeah. And would you watch it on your own to try? Is it like you're punishing yourself? Is that the thing? You're like, oh God, I need to punish myself somehow for that.
A little bit. There's a little bit of the masochistic streak. By the way, Queen B7 here is the fastest way to end the game because it sets up this unstoppable mating mechanism of Bishop G5 and Rook E8. But that is, I don't think Levon will have to watch a horror movie because he's inhabiting a horror movie right now, especially if White plays Queen B7. The Babadook is coming after Black's King.
The Babadook. That was another one. Another classic of recent years. And yeah, Queen B7 is a really nice move, just trapping that Black King. And if you look at the Black Knights, they can't really move. The White King is so safe because of the White's Bishop, and it was this move in the centre, E4, which allowed that dark square bishop to sit there forever, the Babadook. Hereditary, that's another good film as well. That is pretty dark, though, I have to say. Have you seen that one?
I saw that in the theater.
Yeah, that was heavy. That was some heavy stuff there, but good horror film there.
Speaking of heavy stuff.
And he's coming.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, what a tragedy. And what compounds it is the fact that you've got Magnus, the chance to play Magnus.
Yes.
If you win this match, this is going to be pure pain for Levon Ponsalaya, who played such a good opening, had many chances, but ultimately, huge credit to Harsha Barakoti. Time pressure, bad position, doesn't care, sits down and rattles off accurate move after accurate move, and he's going to finish it with a beautiful deflection sacrifice on G5.
Such a nice idea, Bishop G5, and I think as been commentated in the chat, often, it comes down to nerves, these encounters. 2 players, very similar rating. Looked like Black got his opening in. It looked like Black was doing all the right things, but White kept his nerve, kept the pressure up, and kept going more than anything else. And he's going to get a victory here at some moment.
Look at this. This is gorgeous. This is exquisite tactical eye by Harsh. I mean, obviously basic, but still very nice. Rook E8 is a very refreshing ladder checkmate. And Levon just breathed his last breath.
You've left the bishop on pre.
Oh my gosh, Simon, I'm really losing my ability with age. And so is Harsha Barakoti.
Yes.
Come on, Harsha. Do your puzzle rush, man.
Yeah. And very nice. Yeah, there's not. I don't think there's any way you can stop that rook coming down, is there? You know, he resigns. So I forgot that the winner of this match is actually facing Magnus Carlsen, and more than anything, that on its own is such a really cool reward for winning your first match, right? Playing the best player ever. So yeah, brilliant.
Brilliant indeed.
So that game is over. Do we have any other games that we should go to in the time trouble? Maybe we can have a look at Cheparinov and just pop back in some of those top boards.
Yes, let's look at Cheparinov. As we do that, I will mention that Eduardo Iturrizaga Bonei, the Spanish phenom, the Grandmaster, he's lost his first game with the white pieces to Gunzorig Amartufshin from Mongolia. 24-07 defeats a GM with the black pieces. It was not a fluke. He outplayed him from start to finish. I looked at that game over break. Wow. Huge congrats to the Mongolian IM, and best of luck to him tomorrow. Eduardo is going to be mad, and we have seen so many games that are won on demand. But look at this. Look at this, Simon. This is a very competitive endgame. This could be a draw.
Yeah. And I have to say, Cheparinov is not looking happy at the moment after that move. He's looking a little bit annoyed with himself. And White has the extra pawn, though, no? So still some chances. But White's pawns are quite weak. And the black king seems like it has a great chance to enter straight into the position.
But the issue is that White's saddled with all of these weaknesses throughout the board. A takes b4. The time control has been made, so very important. Both sides now have 30 minutes with which to work in this knight endgame. How is this game likely to unfold? Well, I think the big issue is that after a takes b4, black has a very accurate move. We could pull up an analysis board because the players are going to take their time. Apparently, it is very important for black to throw in the move g5. Why? Because you're preventing f4 and you're keeping all of White's pawn islands, right? You're essentially ensuring that White doesn't connect any of his pawns. White probably will bring up his king, and now black can start hunting for White's weak pawns, f4, and now, for example, gf4, knight f4, knight f3, and you just start liquidating. And ultimately, White's not going to win the game. He's not going to have enough pawns if black can remove all of the kingside pawns off the board. So I actually think Al-Hassadi is like a couple of accurate moves away from pulling off what would be a massive upset, particularly given how this game has gone.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it looked like Ivan was basically in charge of it most of the way, and he was basically, just controlling everything. And when you are, I mean, these are some of the most painful games. You're controlling the game, you let something slip, your opponent's right back in it, and you've got to suddenly adjust to that. And there is a danger you can even push a little bit too hard. I mean, I suppose my first thought here, Daniel, was why not take with a knight or on b4? I mean, this is another option because it's quite famous in knight and pawn endings that if you have a rook's pawn, the rook's pawn is a very strong pass pawn, and it is an extra pass pawn. So can he take with a knight here? Is that another way you could try and play this position? I mean, that would come with risk, though.
I would take with the knight. I think that's their best option because, first of all, it poses black with an immediate dilemma. And one very instructive mistake that black could make here is to run directly for the a-pawn, forgetting that you have weaknesses on the other side of the board that the king has to supervise. Here, Cheparinov can drop back to d3, and if you try to do the same thing that we talked about in the other line with g5, the black king is stuck in no man's land, and white will start to pursue the knight out of g2, and after knight h4, f4, this is the critical difference, right? Black doesn't have the move knight to f3, so after the trade, black also cannot approach with his king. So this is like the ideal scenario for Cheparinov. Instead, after a b4, knight b4, black has to stick to the center of the board. King to c5 is very important to be able to go to d5, but to also be close enough to the a-pawn where you're obviously preventing the move a4. So absolutely not, pretending that this is a guaranteed draw. There's a lot of challenges left to solve by black, and we know how good these top grandmasters are at whipping out chances even when there seem to be no chances left to be found.
Yeah, and it's a good time to have a break now. I mean, you can see that Cheparinov has gone into a bit of a think and is using that time in these critical moments. They both now have got that extra half an hour each where they get 30 seconds added on per move, and you've really got to use that time. Do you play it safe, take with a pawn, catch it with a pawn, and rely on winning tomorrow? But that is a gamble. If something goes wrong in one game, you're out of the competition. Or do you really push in this game, maybe giving your opponent some chances? I think the pushing technique is the right way to go here. Take with the knight and go for it.
Yeah. You have nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose, yeah. You're not risking too much there anyway. But you can see Cheparinov looking annoyed. I'm also wondering on some of the games and results that we have been covering today, if Aryan is still playing. So I'm just going to bring that one up. And he is still playing, so I don't know if it's worth checking there while we wait for Cheparinov to move. It does look like Aryan Tari is doing very well in that one. He's controlled the game very nicely, so not too much to report. Any other upsets? We're always getting upsets in these competitions, so I'll just have a look, see if there's anything else we should maybe go to.
Alexander Indich has some beautiful tactics in his game against Amir Zaibi. That was the game with a very nice idea by Zaibi earlier in the game. By the way, Etienne Bacro also struggling to win his first game. He's not risking, but he's in a queen endgame up a pawn. But he's got an exposed king, and he's got a very difficult technical task ahead of him. So that's another potential upset in the making. We also have the game between Dante Boikis and Ivan Saric, which is approaching time control. And finally, I'll let you have the final say as to where we go next, Simon. But we have... What do we have? We have Pablo Salinas Herrera, the Grandmaster from Chile, is very close to defeating Denis Kadric in over 2,600 GM from Bosnia. Look at this position. Pablo Salinas is up a knight.
Wow, okay.
And wow, Pablo Salinas is so underrated. He just came from Charlotte. I saw him 2 weeks ago. He played 2 tournaments here. He had a couple of rough events in the U.S., and he's just won. Wow, look at that timing.
Yeah.
Kadric resigned. He's down a knight. He has nothing to show for it, and the queens are going off the board. Pablo Salinas upset Danish Grandmaster Mads Andersen in a brilliancy at the last World Cup, and now he's won another game against a 2,600 rated opponent.
Yeah, great results, and we are seeing those upsets. I mean, the good thing about these knockout competitions is, okay, you get an upset, but the opponent gets a chance to bite back. So you really see kind of the worth of the player if they can bounce back and recover from these upsets. I mean, I just checking other games that are going on. It does seem like Demchenko is another player who is struggling a little bit against his lower rated player. Is it Peruvian player, Liva? He's outrated him by nearly 300 points, and he's a pawn down here. Some decent drawing chances I expect here for black. That extra pawn is not great, but still a bit of work to be done for Demchenko in that position. Maybe not the most interesting of positions at the moment. Can white use that pawn? Well, what do we reckon? More chances for a draw than a win here, I'd probably say.
I would say 70-30, even 80-20 draw for 2 reasons. The first is that the pawn is very safely blockaded, and it's immobile for the time being. But the second is that in order to unblock the pawn, white will have to divert resources, in particular the bishop on f3, and that is a very dangerous game, because the moment that you remove the bishop from the long diagonal, black will immediately have these mate threats with rook a1 and bishop d5. There's even a very pretty line after bishop e2, rook a1 check, king h2. The best move in the position is, in fact, to play bishop d5. I mean, look at this move. And obviously, bishop takes c4, rook h1 is checkmate. And rook e7 check looks very strong, but doesn't actually help. White has to find, apparently, to move bishop f3 in order to maintain a drawn position. And after king takes e7, it looks like only black is playing. So that's how easy it is to actually allow the tables to get turned. I don't think Leva, as the lower rated player, is going to do anything this overzealous. I think he's going to kind of tread water, and I think Demchenko, with 25 minutes, has enough in the tank here to hold the draw.
Yeah, I expect so. I think it will end up being a draw there. And other games, okay, was quite close encounters throughout the ratings range of where people have similar ratings. Most games are now getting into the ending, into the later stages. So I'm still searching. I'm looking for any.
Oh, I found a game.
You found a game. Good. Let's. What have you found there? Okay, that's an interesting position.
Kind of boring and balanced, Simon, but the best that we have out of the remaining positions. This is really a symmetrical position. Should be a draw, right? I mean, not much talk. Opposite colored bishops. Not much going on here.
Wow, what is going on here? It's a bit crazy, yeah?
Black is winning. This is incredible. Look at this position. Yeah. So black's last move after h4, Josiah trying to generate chances against black's king. Rook to a7.
Beautiful.
Double idea. Deflection and setting up X-ray attack on the e7 rook. Too many threats, and the black king is safe. After rook takes f7, you can make a knight, but a better idea is just to trade rooks and overwhelm white's defenses with b takes a3, when obviously the two pawns are completely unstoppable. What a win this is going to be by Mikhail Antipov.
Lovely move, rook a7. I mean, that shows some great vision, right? Just finding that move in that situation. It's not the first move that would spring to most minds there. Using those pawns to come through. I'm also just trying to have an update on some of the games we've already looked at, and the Sarek game is still very interesting there, but maybe not too much has changed. This was the game between Sarek and Dante. Mm-hmm. Dante playing a brilliant game, I have to say, being outrated by 400 odd points or something. Dante from Nambia, and that one still quite closely battling away. Fresnay. Well, should we have a little look at Fresnay's position, because he seems to have got a fair few pawns there.
I think that's definitely the game we'll go to. I actually think we are going to go on a short break first. But after that, we've got the two biggest games still going on. The Saric game and the Fresnay game, I think, are probably the most competitive, Simon, of the games remaining. So plenty in store for the viewers. But I need a little bit more coffee.
Good idea. We'll take a break. Be back soon.
International Master Danny Wrench, Chief Chess Officer, back again with more chess terms here for you today. We're going to talk about the passed pawn. The passed pawn must be pushed. You hear it said often, and that's because just about every endgame you see that isn't a blowout often comes down to maybe someone's up one pawn, or maybe even just the first person to create a passed pawn is the person who goes on to win that game. We're going to talk about what the passed pawn is and define it for you in today's video. Let's do it. What is a passed pawn? A passed pawn is a pawn that has no enemy pawns stopping it from moving forward. That means pawns either on the file in which it resides or on the adjacent files that would therefore capture the pawn should it advance. So if a pawn has none of those things stopping its way, then it's time to push them, baby, as our boy Yasser would say, and as you hear mentioned on many broadcasts that you would watch on Chess TV. And on that note, as we look at our game examples we like to do, this is taken from Tomaszewski versus Rajava. Here, white plays the move b5 exclam, which highlights, again, it's not how many pawns you have, but who's going to be threatening to get a queen first. After black takes it, white pushes forward with gusto, and because the rook can't blockade the pawn due to the light square bishop, This game is already over. Black is going to have to sacrifice the bishop for the pawn on b6, and white would simply be up a minor piece. Note that after the first move b5, should a takes b5 have been played, white would have pushed this pawn and then trapped the rook on a7, showing the power of the passed pawn. As with it protecting the bishop, this rook is completely out of the game, and white would easily go on to win, picking up pawns and just flexing the rook's muscles over the bishop for the rest of the game. So here we see a passed pawn being used as a weapon to just cramp down and trap all of your enemy pieces. So this has been another Chess Terms video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're enjoying all of them. And with that, I will sign off, hoping that you learned something about what a passed pawn is, and we'll see you around on chess.com.
We're back with our coverage of the first round of the Fide World Cup in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. And well, this is one of the most exciting chess events of the year. There's over 300 of the best players playing. It's a knockout competition. They start by playing one game each at a bit of a longer time limit, and if it's a draw after that, rapid, then blitz, and it can be very, very exciting. But maybe the most important thing about this competition, which every elite chess player wants to get into, is the top 3 players at the end of it go to the candidates competition. And the candidates, well, if you haven't heard of the candidates, who are ya? Who are ya? You must have heard of the candidates. It's how you become world champion. And, well, it's a big award to get. Daniel, why aren't you in the candidates?
Man, Simon, my chess career has entered a dead end, a cul-de-sac, so to speak. I can't even win the FIDE Grand Swiss Isle of Man. I can't even qualify for the World Cup. I can't even defeat Jan Nepomniachtchi. I don't know what I can do, I'll be honest.
Well, you're nearly chess.com bullet world champion. I mean, you were close. there was a couple of other guys in front of you there, but
they weren't very good.
Yeah, I mean, you should have beat them. To be fair, I did think you would pip them somehow, but didn't quite happen this time around. But maybe in the future, Daniel, don't give up on your career yet. Yeah, we'd love to see you in the candidates, wouldn't we? Wouldn't we? Twitch chat. Would we like to see Daniel in the candidates, crushing somebody's of the world's elite with the Jabava London, and you know, it'd be good to see. But yeah, I mean, in seriousness, it would be good to see you there, of course. But it is a really, I think most chess players who are over 2,600, over 2,500, they just dream of the opportunity to play the best players in the world and break through. And the way to do that is to get into the candidates. We've mentioned it before. And how do you get into the candidates? Well, it's very hard to do. There's only a couple of competitions where you can qualify, and this is one of those competitions. So it is a big chance. And as this competition goes on, the stakes are going to get higher and higher. So it's going to become more and more interesting. You can see the match format that all the players are playing. A lot of the top seeds, all of the top seeds have a bye into round 2. The top seed in this first round is Cheparinov, but there are being some shock results as we go on, and it's an opportunity for the lower rated players to show their worth today. David Howe, I'm looking forward to seeing him. If you've got to pick one, okay, we've got to pick 3 players who are going to get in the candidates. Daniel, I'm not putting you on the spot at all. Which 3 players will get in the candidates from this tournament?
Well, I have to go with Magnus.
Do you think he'll play in the candidates? Do you think Magnus will?
I think he will.
You think he will? Okay.
I think he will, actually. I think, here's what I think a lot of chess fans are missing. I think people think, okay, Magnus is a problem with the format. He's not going to play a world championship unless it's against, Hikaru or Alireza. But I think what might happen is Carlsen plays the World Cup. He works incredibly hard. He wins the World Cup, or he gets second. I feel like, it's some of the psychology behind like cooking. When you cook your own food, if you get the same food from a restaurant, it won't taste as good because you made it with your own hands. I think something similar might happen with Magnus, where he'll feel that he invested so much work into re-qualifying for the candidates. Why don't I play in the candidates? Then he plays in the candidates, he qualifies for the World Championship, and at that point, it's the sunk cost effect. You've sunk too much effort not to play in the World Championship. I am voting that if he wins the World Cup, we will see Magnus in the candidates, and if he wins the candidates, then we will see him in the World Championship. But maybe I'm just applying my biases and I'm living a false reality. So that's one play.
So I think, Daniel, with Magnus, all the chess world would love to see him continue playing classical chess against the other best players, right? It's a dream because he's the best player. I would love to see him fight for the World Championships again. I'd love to see him in the candidates. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think it's going to happen, I'm afraid. I think he's like, unless the time limit is changed, I think he's like, I've done that. I'm going to play a bit of poker, maybe become a DJ, play a bit of the faster speed limit. I'd love to see it happen. But okay, let's go with Magnus. And which other 2 players are you going for then?
Okay, for my dark horse, I'm going to choose my compatriot, Ray Robson. I really think that Ray, he was in bad form in the tournament he played in Dubai recently. But when Ray is in good form, I really feel like with his level of opening prep, and that's, I think, the most important factor, he's got such good opening preparation, and that's a much bigger factor in the World Cup than I think it is in other tournaments, because you only have 2 games for each player, and you can really invest a lot of time preparing for each opponent. So I'm going to choose Ray for my dark horse, and Listen, obviously Hikaru has shown majestic form over the last year or so. He's got to be a favorite. How about you, Simon? Who's your dark horse? Who's your super GM that you think is going to go far?
Just while you're saying that, I'm looking at Cheperinov's stare there. He had the dead stare against his opponent. He was just staring him down with those eyes. My dark horse is going to be David Howe. It has to be, Daniel, for a number of reasons. Number one, David Howe is a fantastic player, and people forget this because he's such a fantastic commentator. He's nearly qualified twice for the candidates already. He's young. He's incredibly talented. He has a very good style, and he's one of the most competitive fighters that I know. And you need to have that spirit in this competition. You need to be a real fighter. You know, it's so key to have that. So I'm going to go David Howell as my outside horse. I mean, again, the top players, they're all so good. I mean, working on the Champions Tour, you could mention people like Wesley So even, right? Wesley So, I believe, is playing here. I hope I've got that right. I better double check that. But Wesley is just really good in this kind of format. Another outsider, I think these are names to look out for. I was checking this out, Daniel. I mean, I was just checking. Some places they have odds on the players that are created, you know, by some of the betting markets, which I don't get involved with, but they're interested to give us an idea of what's happening. And I was also thinking maybe Gukesh as a little outside bet. He was 40-1, which I thought was crazy, and I thought Gukesh is very capable of qualifying. So I haven't really answered the question about my three, so I'm going to do it now very quickly. How Gukesh as two outsiders. And let me go for, I'm going to pick 4, Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen. Just to pick 4 people, just to make it difficult. What do you reckon? Is that a good mix?
I think that's a great mix. I just can't believe that we're watching round 1 and it's already so interesting. Imagine how interesting it's going to be, not only with closer matchups, but when we get to watch Magnus, Hikaru, Wesley, Gukesh, Prague, somebody else that, and I'm not talking about the city in the Czech Republic, I'm talking about the beast, the baby-faced assassin, Pragnananda. How crazy is it going to be when we get that menu of 7 or 8 games featuring all these players? We are spoiled.
We're going to be really spoiled. I mean, this is also going to be going on for, I think, nearly a month now, isn't it, this event? So we've got a brilliant month of chess. And, you know, personally, I prefer these longer time limit events to the quicker one because we can really savor every moment of it. We can really get deep into the games and work out what's happening. So it's going to be a fantastic month. And as the big guns start playing, the tension's going to rise so much. And other names that are interesting, I also saw Svidler. He was 250-1. And I think Svidler has got in the final twice. You know, I know he's a bit older, but he's just performed quite well. And, you know, you've got so many legends of the games. Ivanchuk has managed to find his way out of Ukraine into it. And, you know, I think we'll all be cheering for Ivanchuk. But what legends of the game just to watch play, Danya. I mean, I've love watching such greatness, and especially in such a competitive setting. It's going to be brilliant.
I'm enjoying every second of it, and it's a great privilege to watch so many of these players from various generations in action. And I always compare it to having courtside seats on, you know, an amazing basketball game, which features, you know, Michael Jordan and Steph Curry and all the greatest players. Like we get to watch it from up close, not physically, of course. We're not in Baku, as far as I know. Maybe I was transported there in my sleep, but in terms of our closeness to the games as they unfold, you know, I get to have the best seats in the house. So it's really, really amazing. We truly live in the golden age of chess, and those are not just vacuous words to make us feel good. Truly, you know, these experiences should be savored. And I think Ivan Cheparinov is savoring his experience of converting this endgame. They followed the path that we had laid out. I jinxed it. I take responsibility, Simon. It is my fault. Black put the king on the wrong square. He put it on b5, too far away from his own weakness on e6, and Chaparinov will not give black another chance. This one, unfortunately, is going to be, I think, a 0 on the cross table. But what a 0 it's going to be for the young man from Libya. How close he came to making this draw.
Yeah, a lot of people say that's encouraging, right? When you get close to the draw and you lose, but it doesn't matter who you're playing. It's still really painful. At least he gets another chance tomorrow. And you're right, it looks like white is completely winning now. And this is quite a common endgame technique where you sort of divert your opponent to one side and then you go to the other side, right? And the black knight is on the verge of getting trapped. It's not quite getting trapped, but with the white king coming over, it's going to have to go to some very bad squares. That pawn on e6 will drop as well, and I can't really see any way at all that black even has a chance to hold this, in actual fact.
No.
The black king's going to be too far away from the action in this ending.
Yeah, he's taking his time, which signals to us that he senses that he's slipping away. And this a-pawn, you called it, Simon, you want the pawn to be as far away from the action as possible. That is called an outside pass pawn. And the moment black's king inches back toward the center, white will run that pawn up the board. And black's just overextended. He doesn't have sufficient resources to defend his weaknesses. And of course, this idea of playing f2, f3, f4, the moment the knight drops back to h4, is also very important, because that is the way in which white accesses the e6 pawn from the right side. One way or the other, black is running out of time, running out of resources. Going to be a win for the top seed, but Chaparinov will have to step it up if he is to continue his sojourn in Baku. Okay, what other games do we have that are competitive? Alexander Indic is about to defeat Amir Zaibi. He is up a full piece in the endgame. We have the Etienne Bacro game.
There's also an interesting one just going on here between two players quite closely rated, and it's I don't know what board it is, but Megaranto versus and again you have to help me out with the pronunciation here, of which country? Indonesia, with the white pieces, and just an interesting position on the board. White has sort of dived in with an interest. We have knights versus bishops there. Let me try to work out where this one is, and we'll go there. And you have Sergei Azarov with the black pieces. So quite a lot of action here. The white knight jumping in, and both of these players, 2,500, trying to go as far as they can in this competition. The evaluation bar gives this as even, but that last move leaves the white rook on pre. But the black king is looking very bare at the same time. Hard to assess this by just glancing at the position.
Very hard to assess. After this, we have to go to the Jules Moussard game, because something insane is unfolding in that game. I cannot believe my eyes, but...
Let me guess. Is Jules going to win?
He has winning chances.
Okay,
and just that phrase alone should be enough to send people into, apoplectic shock. But let's try to puzzle out the evaluation of this game. It might be kind of one of those positions where it's chaotic at the moment, but we're about to get a bunch of liquidation and potentially drawn position, because the pawn count is even. So the biggest question to ask here is, well, what happens if black takes the rook? And the answer is not necessarily knight f6 check. I think this is the tempting move, but believe it or not, it might be wiser for white to just recapture on d2 and maintain, all of the threats against black's king. Because if white plays knight f6 check, after king g7, knight takes c4, black can drop the bishop back to f4, and these bishops are kind of slicing through the position. There's a nasty check on a1, but instead Sergei Azarov takes a different approach. He eliminates the knight on g4 first. Now he's going to take on d2, and then he's going to finish off by taking on g4. So feels like he's preserving nominal winning chances, I want to say, but maybe white can draw by going after that pawn on d6.
Yeah, both kings are quite exposed here. If white can get his queen behind and into the black territory, then the black king will be exposed to a number of checks. So you're right, probably lots of pieces getting whipped off, and heading towards a draw. But I really want to see what's happening in this ending where Jules was a pawn down with no winning chances at all. It looked like he was holding the draw quite comfortably, but has he managed to turn it around somehow? Wow, what happened here? So what happened? We have to see what happened here.
Unbelievable. Let's rewind 20 moves or so. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Let's rewind to this position. Okay,
Yeah.
black is still up a pawn. Okay, he got his king sandwiched a little bit between white's pawns. Okay, draw. But black continues to play. Okay. What on earth could have happened here?
Black's still doing all right.
This is a dead draw.
Yeah,
still
dead draw.
fine.
Black's trying though, but
goodness.
Dear.
Oh my gosh. No way. And he loses one pawn and then loses the other because he couldn't have gone the other way. He would have lost the f pawn and lost the game.
Oh dear.
This is, Simon, textbook example of what happens when you overpress, when you try to apply a false reality onto the real reality of the game. You just cannot force it against someone like Jules. And now it's black who has to be very, very careful not to lose this f-pawn. It's still a draw, and he should be able to make it, but when you're panicked and you're depressed because you have to defend now, it's so easy to commit a subsequent blunder. Jules can torture this out for another 50 moves.
Yeah, I mean, you've just lost 2 pawns. I mean, that g4 move was a really big mistake. And sometimes if it's a draw, it's a draw. You just got to take it. You know, you can't, as you say, force the issue. Does white have... I mean, I think the reason this is... Well, of course, it should be a draw. The only way white can win this position is if white wins the black pawn. So it'd probably be the same result. And is there any way that white could ever win that pawn? And I just can't see it, because the black king can always stay in range of it. So white may have to try moving his king to a better position. But if the white king ever moves forwards, the pawn on g2 will drop. So I can't see any way you can even try to win this one. I mean, can you put your rook on g4? Is that something? No, that's... Maybe
exactly what I would try. I would try to play rook g4. The issue is, even if you, in the quote-unquote best-case scenario, you dislodge the rook from the g-file, okay, then what? Yeah. Because black's king is going to stay permanently tied to the f-pawn. And anytime you play g3 and trade off a pair of pawns, I mean, that's obvious. Your pawn is not even close to where it should be, so that's an even simpler draw. No, this is... Yeah, unfortunately for Jules, he has to be thrilled to be in this situation to begin with, but... I don't see even a sliver of opportunity here, unless, of course, black commits another egregious error and allows a rook trade, for example. And then that might be a draw.
Maybe it wasn't an error, Dania. Maybe black was enjoying himself so much. He's got to the Fide World Cup. He's playing a great game. He was a pawn up, and he thought, well, look, rather than agreeing a draw, I'll give Jules 2 pawns and just show him that I can still draw this position. I just want to draw this out a little bit.
This out. Nice.
Maybe that's his thinking. I somehow doubt it, though. Now, just getting some news that another game which is also still very close is the Sarek game as well. I mean, Sarek's opponent, Dante, I think it was playing a brilliant game there in a very exciting Sicilian. So how are things going there? Wow, look at him. Dante's still playing a brilliant game.
But that's the thing. That's why I pointed this game out right when it began. Dante, I played him over the board in a tournament in Charlotte about a year ago. 2180 is a joke of a rating for Dante. He is definitely, maybe not strong IM strength, but he's very tactically gifted and just the kind of guy that you would just hate to face in a tournament. And that's just been happening recently with, some people, yes, they're overrated, but other players are just wildly underrated. And absolutely hats off to Dante, regardless of how this game goes. Now, what's going on in this position? It looks like white's playing for a win here. He's still up in exchange. He still has this knight that's holding down the c5 pawn. And if black rushes the move bishop takes c5, when you're up in exchange, that is, when you're down in exchange, you don't want to get too many minor pieces off the board, because especially you don't want to get one pair of rooks off the board, because then you're just lost.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's Black who's certainly one on the back foot here. At the end of the day, the extra exchange does count for a lot. Black's 2 bishops, well, okay. They're not really thriving. There's not many open lines for them. And the pawn on e3 could drop as well here. If one of those white rooks ever gets into the position, the black king is also in a cage. I'm really sort of intrigued how he got here, though. Because before, it looked like Sarek was making progress. He had that majority of pawns on the king side coming forward. So is it possible to have a look at how things may have gone wrong for Black? Yeah, around about here, it looked like Black was doing right, didn't it, Danya? We were still quite liking Black's position, no?
Yeah, and White was going back and forth. He went king a2 and king b1, didn't know what to do, was trying to make time control. But look at Dante, h4 and g4, just meeting Black at the top and trying to generate activity on the king side. Both of those were some of the top engine moves. Now, apparently, a mistake by Šarić, which was to play f4, and it's such a natural move. You get the protected passer. The issue is that White just has a fortress, and they repeated moves a couple times, and Šarić now makes the decision to go for the win. I think Boikis would have been okay with a repetition of moves here, but having made time control, Šarić repeats one more time, and then plays knight to e3. And this is an incredibly risky move. Boikis locks up the king side with h5. And the current position after e2 is one in which I feel like White's the only one who has serious winning chances here. You just go rook e1, and here's what's likely to happen. Rook e1, bishop takes c5. Knight c5, rook c5, and now very important move, king d2. Super important. Why? Because rook takes e5 is met with the decisive c4, and if Black loses the e-pawn, he immediately loses the game.
Yeah, some nice lines there. I mean, that e-pawn is the one move that can try and trick White out, but I don't see how that e-pawn's going to survive for too long. You know, it's going to be an issue, and forever and ever. And it might be the case that Sarek was in some ways, he must have realised that his position is not better. If anything, it's going to be worse. And he's just gambled, right? He's just completely gambled in this position. And Bruce Mac was asking, by the way, was that a cat I heard? It is out of my window. I have a very old cat who loves screaming sometimes, but it is being looked after as it's a bit senile while I commentate. So it's the loudest cat you'll ever hear. It's like whenever you hear it scream, it sounds like a child is getting murdered. So it's a bit, it's back to that horror film kind of thing. So it does worry a lot of people, but at least everyone knows about it by now. So any more moves? Do we have bishop takes c5 on the board? Has that been played?
Fact, yes, it has.
Okay.
And of course, Dante will take on c5, play king d2, and I think Šarić will hold this position. I think this will be a draw, because what's likely to happen is that Black will simply keep his rook on c5 and try to make it as difficult as possible for White to play c4. He might even put a bishop on that square just to kind of sit on that square and make sure that White never gets c4, and then Black can shuffle, right? You can go king f7, e7, and then just sort of shuffle with your king. You've got a lot of squares. I probably wouldn't push a5 because that leaves the bishop on b5 without a protection, and it makes it possible for White potentially to play rook b1 and maybe try to infiltrate down the b file. You could also get checkmated here because the king is in a box, right? Yeah. Both squares on the 6th rank are controlled, so whatever you do, keep this bishop in the vicinity of the b and c files. I think you might get a situation where Dante runs out of ways to make progress.
The only way I can see maybe White trying to win this position is, could you try to put the king on b3 and go c4? I know it's risky because I'm not keeping an eye on your e-pawn as much, but the c4 move that you pointed out, Daniel, seems to be like the key idea. Without playing c4, I don't see how White can get into the position at all. He's got to play c4, and the only way I can see to support that is maybe you can also go king d2 and rook c1 to try and do it like this. But if I can get c4 in, can I at least try to win this position? It's worth having a look at. Maybe you can take on e5 and I'm falling for c4, rook c5. I'm not sure here, but it's worth a try, maybe. Worth analyzing.
Definitely. Worth thinking about for sure. He's got 11 minutes on the clock, does Dante. So I could see this just sort of being a draw, but I could also see Dante saying, listen, you want to play for a win? I'll show you who the papa is in this position. Big question for white. Do you throw all caution to the wind, play king b2, king b3, or you say, I got a draw in the bag against a very good player. Let's go king d2 and just kind of shuffle between c1 and e1. I think that you should err on the side of caution. I think king d2 might be the safer move, and then I at least would try to play rook c1. And if it doesn't work out, okay, you go back to e1 and you can always offer a draw.
So what happens after king b2? Can I just see how
let's
black?
Take a look.
Yeah, how black
so
can
king
play
b2,
against this? Yeah.
So first question is, okay, let's say I go king f7.
Yeah.
You go king b3, right?
Sure.
You are threatening c4. I don't want to take on e5. I might have to try to rely on my a pawn. No, a5, c4, and I have no way to make progress. White wins. So I guess I have to take on e5 at this point.
Yeah, probably have to take on e5.
And reroute the bishop to... that's the key defensive idea, because bishop f3 is going to come at the right time.
And this is... It is risky for white to play like this, obviously, because, if you've got a second e-pawn now as well. I've dropped my e-pawn, but if he really wants to gamble, then maybe he could try this one. But this bishop f3 is an important idea. Get the bishop defending that pawn in the right way. And the other idea, he has gone king d2, was I don't think rook c1's probably similar, maybe a little bit worse actually than the lines you're showing.
Yeah, similar type of concept. Yeah. And definitely he spent some time calculating king b2. He took about 3 minutes on this move. Okay, so we'll see if this one ends in kind of a peaceful draw, or if Dante makes a serious attempt at winning the game. In that case, we will revisit this position immediately. A couple of updates, and I'll give you the say as to which game we go to next. Maybe Cheparino, because that one continues to go on, and black is finding all the best defensive moves, but it might not be enough. Fressinet has won. Antipov has won. Ariantari has converted that 2 pawns up endgame. And Alexander Indich is about to win, so most games are over. Shall we go to Cheparinov's game and see how his conversion is proceeding?
Let's have a look, yeah. So this is our ball one encounter of the first day. Let's just remind everyone, a lot of the top seeds have got a bye through to round 2. Do you think that's fair that they get a bye, Daniel? I mean, I was kind of thinking about this, and I was like, why have they got a bye? I wasn't really understanding why they got a bye. Okay, maybe it's just making it the numbers work a little bit better, but it's given them obviously a bit of an advantage because they're getting a bit more of a rest compared to the other players, and I suppose it is part of the process. Getting a bye, but I don't actually understand it 100%. And this position, well, there you go. The A pawn is now being used, and that's going to be used as mainly a distracting mechanism to force the black king away from the other area of the board. So A4 coming, and also there's no obvious way that black can maybe win that pawn even. Black could be in a zugzwang situation where now he has to play a move which will weaken his position a little bit. And I have to say that, Josef is defending, admirably, and a lot of people are saying very good comments about his hat. What do we reckon? Good hat? I like the hat. I think it's very, very nice.
10 out of 10. I think he's dressed very elegantly. I love it when players show up, respecting the game. And so is Ivan Cheparino. This is just refreshing to see. But yeah, unfortunately, this game is slipping away from him. In terms of the buys, I think it is fair. And I think, you should have benefits of being one of the top players in the world. Like, the players who are lower rated, yeah, they have to work a little bit harder. If you're Magnus Carlsen, I feel like you've earned the right to not have to play the first round just on the strength of all of your achievements. And I think that's a good way of rewarding achievement without detracting anything from the lower rated players. It's not necessarily that they start with a disadvantage. It's more that the top players start with an advantage. So this is a relatively new innovation in the World Cup. I think only the last couple of World Cups had this buy system, and I think I think positively on it. Also, we get more anticipation, right? The anticipation builds up, and when we finally do get to watch Magnus and Hikaru and the others, we're able to savor it and appreciate it a little bit more. But there are many ways to look at this. It's, I think, largely a matter of taste. I don't think there's a correct answer here.
Yeah, it could work either way. I mean, it'd be nice to see them play now as well. But fair enough, they get a bye. It's all going to probably come to the same at the end anyway. That's I suppose, the point. That the same cream is going to rise to the top generally. You have the same pool of players. There might be a couple of exceptions to that. Maybe some of the younger players are really going to perform and do well. But this position, yeah, after A4, it is certainly slipping away from black. They say the easiest endings to win when you're a pawn up is just king and pawn endings. So if you're a pawn up in a king and pawn ending, you should nearly always win. They say the second easiest endings to win are knight and pawn endings. So when you're a pawn up and there's just one set of knights on the board. It's obviously notorious that rook endings are often drawn and opposite colour bishop endings are the hardest to win as well. But yeah, A4 in the position, and black, I can't see anything else to do except for move the knight. And the problem is that knight doesn't have any great squares, and white has a couple of options. Maybe you can just give the A pawn up on the next move or something similar. How would you win this? Let's put some moves on the board, shall we, Daniel? Let's say, okay, there's a check there, knight G3. Black maybe just trying to go backwards and forwards with a knight. I didn't think that was maybe the best move because now the white king gains a tempo into the king side. And can you even give the knight up now? This is the key point.
I think you can, and I think you will. And the thing is, it's very, like you're saying, it's very easy to calculate some of these lines because it's just straightforward. You push your pawns, and here's how this game is likely to end. I think Ivan is going to take a little bit of time and play king G4. The king exits the box of the pawn, which means it starts running forward. You can't stop it with your king. You have to stop it with your knight. Now you can play A6. The knight is tied down. Now you create the second pass pawn. This is the classic situation known in Russian chess circles as trousers. You have two pass pawns on opposite sides of the board, and the further apart they are, the better it is. Because black is out of resources. The knight has to stay hooked to the A pawn. The black king cannot. And is actually only one tempo short, right? If black could play king F7 here, then white would be the one who had to force a draw. But as it stands, white plays H7. This is all that Cheparinov has to calculate. And once he does, I think he'll go for this line. What's funny is that black can go knight E5, and now the other pawn advances to A7. Black is just has his hands full, and this is why knights struggle so much when they have to multitask, because they're a short-range piece. That's how it's going to go.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way you can stop that at all, you know. Short-range pieces, not good at dealing with pawns on the other side of the board. You'd love to be able to stop these pawns from going on the other side of the pawn as well, but knights can't jump off the board. And can we have a look at Backrow's game as well? So this is, I think, the board 2 game, and Backrow seemed to be doing very well in that game, but you mentioned earlier that the ending is not easy for him to win. And queen and pawn endings, notoriously difficult to convert, because queens are so tricky, and there's numerous perpetual checks that you can fall into in a lot of positions. But one thing you should try to do in queen and pawn endings is keep your queen as active as possible and try to keep it in the middle. That's just a general rule. And black is clearly pushing here. Black is a pawn up, And at the moment, the white queen is very much misplaced on the edge of the board at the moment. So it's a bad square for the white queen.
I think, first of all, it should be pointed out that Bakro has oodles of time on his clock, and white only has 30 seconds. So white's playing completely on increment here, which might already be a death sentence, given that he's going to have to defend for potentially infinite number of moves. How is Bakro actually going to generate chances here? Well, I think his best chance is to set his kingside pawns in motion and to play f5. Now, you have to find the right time for that, because if you play f5 prematurely, you allow white's queen to get active. So what I would play is king to the back row, back to d8, then just start running these pawns.
Can you just say that again? King where?
King to the back row.
Nice. That's
and
another
that was
one.
Smooth, too.
That was smooth.
I integrated that into the position on the board. I actually believe that king d8 is the best move on the board.
Brilliant. So you integrated the pun and the best move in a very smooth nature. You're just a legend, Danya. Absolute legend.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done, sir.
I appreciate it. Well, back row will have to find a way to immobilize this queen. And then you go f5, e4, f4, e3, and just try to pose problems, because with 30 seconds on the clock, eventually there's going to be a problem that white doesn't have enough time to solve.
And you better hope that you don't need to go to the toilet if you're white here, because
I've been there.
I've been there as well. When you've got 30 seconds, and maybe you've been drinking a lot of water during the game, and suddenly the urge starts coming, and you've got to wait another 45 minutes. It can be very difficult. So let's hope he hasn't drunk too much water. Little factors. But I think back row will convert this as well. And he's going king to the back row. Nice move. Well spotted there. And this way of winning does seem... Well, this way of advancing seems to be quite a nice idea. I'm surprised the evaluation bar is only given this as a slight advantage to black. That is very peculiar to me, because it's a clear pawn and the white queen is badly misplaced. Why is it only a small advantage for black here, according to the evaluation bar? Is that evaluation bar right? It's very peculiar. Okay, he's thrown a check in. Fair enough.
It's growing. I think the reason is, with computer defense, white can engineer a situation where black objectively can't make decisive progress. Like, white basically has to keep his queen on a square such that when black starts pushing his pawns, you're able to access one of the squares that opens up. But all of that is predicated on perfect computer defense, even with full complement of minutes on the clock. I think, imagine having this against Magnus. Like, would you have any realistic chance of saving this against Magnus? The answer is no.
I'd just resign.
Not to mention, I would too, actually. I would seriously consider it. That torture is not worth your psyche.
No. Just resign. Have a drink. Get ready for the next game. That'd be a good way of doing it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's just the white queen is so passive in these positions. I mean, the black queen is centralized, and this does make a big difference. And the other reason white's going to struggle here is that there's always going to be little offers of an exchange of queens. And if white does exchange the queens off, he's probably going to lose the king and pawn ending. The black king centralizing, going to support those pawns slowly coming down the board. So yeah, black in driver's seat. White's best strategy, probably, as you mentioned, just to wait. Maybe wait until the black pawns come forwards, then try to get around the back, maybe. So,
yes.
This is the most active solution, right?
We probably will end up having, unless white blunders a queen exchange, we might get a situation where, for instance, white gives up the b4 pawn and then starts checking the black king, and the black king might run to white side of the board. So don't be surprised if you see that. That's a very common way that queen endgames end, is either one side entraps the king in some sort of a perpetual, or the king is able to seek refuge in the opponent's side of the board, and the checks dry up and you have too many extra pawns. So Bakro has a lot of work to do. This is far from a given that this is winning. I would now play the move queen d4 and try to keep the queen restricted.
Yeah.
That is precisely what he's done. I mean, Etienne is just that, all that experience he has, and he's not just playing fast because he's tilted. He's making obvious moves and keeping the pressure on his opponent's clock, which is precisely what you have to do. I'm also keeping an eye on Cheperinov's position. And Ivan, has he played the Knight Sacrifice is what I'm trying to determine. He has. He has done just that. We can go to his game maybe and watch the last few moves of the game being played.
Yeah, look at that A pawn. That is a runner. And just some careful calculation was needed there. And it's going exactly the way you predicted, right? Those wing pawns are too strong for the knight. And a queen will hit the board. So he's got there in the end.
Yeah, this was a much, much harder game, I think, than Ivan anticipated. Particularly the way that it unfolded in the beginning. Black was in time pressure. He was under pressure on the position, but he just, sunk his teeth, or tied a knot at the end of the rope and hung in there. But it's so brutal facing these top guys because they just never lose hope. They never stop their legs from moving. They never stop pounding you with new problems, and you fail to solve one of those problems accurately, poof, your drawing chances evaporate faster than a puddle on a hot day.
Yeah. I only see one way the Black Knight can stop that pawn as well now. It's got to check, and it has, and come back. I don't think it was any other way, but how can you stop the other pawn? You simply can't. So the Black Knight stops one pawn, but you need another knight to stop the other pawn. So it's not happening here, and White will get a queen. So this looks pretty straightforward, I think, this win, right? I mean,
yes.
I don't, Cheperinov's obviously, it's very hard not to win this position, actually, because your moves are so obvious. So,
I'm not sure what Black is thinking about. I mean, I sometimes feel like that happens where, from our perspective, we've already cycled through the decisive line and we've already calculated it, but Black is, remember that he's also playing after 5 hours and he has a lot of emotions tied into the game. So a lot of time when you see players kind of sitting there in hopeless positions, they're not, quote unquote, thinking in the conventional sense. They're, thinking about what went wrong. They're, cycling through the same line over and over again. Again, it's like the 5 stages of grief. And you've got so much hard work and effort tied into the game that it can be hard to accept, that finally your defense has come to an end. And I think Black is accepting that and will be resigning very shortly.
I agree. It's more of a psychological thing, right? I mean, you've got another game tomorrow against the same opponent, and even if you didn't, it doesn't matter. But you've got to okay, look, I've lost this game. It was a tough game, but let's I want to resign it maybe at my own pace. You're sort of even putting a little bit of dominance on the position, just saying I'm going to resign it when I want to resign it. You don't want to go too long. You don't want to insult your opponent too much when it's clearly not happening. Can we also? It looks like this game's quite straightforward. The H pawn or the A pawn win. Can we go back to the game Dante versus Arik? Because even though that one was probably a draw if White wanted it to be, it looked like one of the more interesting positions and possibly also an upset, right? Has White made any progress here?
Yes, Dante has gotten his king onto the perfect blockading spot. Now, Saric has, in fact, taken the e5 pawn, and now the battle will revolve around whether White can isolate and then pick off this e-pawn. If he does that, then his winning chances increase exponentially. The first step, I think, is to prevent bishop f3. I think that's crucial. Do not play rook d2 here. That's hasty. After bishop f3, White would look at Dante. I mean, he is just maintaining his composure. And this is the move that I'm sure Saric was dreading to see. And the next move is likely to be rook d2 or even c5. You can start pushing the c-pawn because the king is cut off from the pawn. But Saric is on the verge of being losing here. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as you get rid of that one dangerous pawn, the pawn one square away from queening, it's has he played a5?
Start pushing. Yes,
Okay.
and c5 now should lead to a winning advantage. Rook d2. The problem is that black has the move rook to e4.
Yeah.
And white will, in fact, lose the g-pawn. And if white loses the g-pawn, it's a 3-result game again.
Yeah, you might as well try to queen your c-pawn if you can as well, right? So just try to force it through.
Yeah, I think what helps is that there's really no other moves. Like, if you reject rook d2, then other than c5, well, what else are you going to do? It's easy to reject c5, though, Simon, because you give up the d5 square, and you might say, oh, but then the rook doesn't cut the king off anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But in that case, you go c6. I mean, it's quite easy to calculate. Pretty intuitive line. I think Dante's going to play it.
I think he would as well. I mean, it's the most forcing move. He's played really well so far in this game.
He did.
You know,
he's
played it. Great play. And if we think how this game has gone, if you've been following it from the start, it's a very sharp Sicilian. Sarek played some great theory, it looked like, but Dante held his own. He could have easily cracked. He could have easily got smashed in this game, but he kept finding good resources after good resource. And I think that has frustrated Sarek, and Sarek made that risky decision to play for the win in a position where it just wasn't founded. And well, maybe the only chance is bishop d5 now. I can't see anything else because rook d6 is coming, right?
Rook d6 is coming. It's very straightforward. And that's what really hurts black, is how straightforward white's ideas are. You have one plan, which is to push the c-pawn. But often the higher-rated player gets this feeling of invincibility. They feel like because their lower-rated opponent is happy with the draw, that they can basically do anything. And okay, worst comes to worst, I'll find a way to make a draw. Suddenly, you look at the position, you're dead lost, and then the lower-rated player is not going to repeat moves anymore. Dante wasn't born yesterday. Like, he knows he's winning, and he knows that this is a chance of a lifetime. And Sarge, at this point, basically needs a miracle. He needs to find a way to pose challenges to white. White's clock, that might be the only practical chance. Rook d6. Has to find rook d6, though. That's very important.
I think it's quite an easy move to find, right? I mean, you don't have too many other moves. You might as well create a threat. You either play rook d6 or you go passive. And the good thing about rook d6 as well is that you can get behind, in a lot of circumstances, black's dangerous passed pawn. So rook d6, if the bishop comes to d5, you go rook a6. And the best place to deal with a passed pawn for your rook is behind that pawn. So I'm sure the way he's been playing, he will play it now. It'd be amazing if he doesn't play that move in this situation. Cheparinov did win, by the way, as we were expecting.
Yeah, good job by the top seed today, not the top seed in the tournament. Now, rook takes c5 doesn't work here because white x-ray defends the rooks and picks off the bishop. So Sarge will move the bishop. I don't know where he can go, because the rook can also swing over to the queen side, stopping the a-pawn and paving the way for c6. My vote is bishop b7, rook b6, bishop c8. You basically go for passive defense and try to make the path of the c-pawn as difficult as possible. Wow, this will be a monumental upset if Dante can pull this off.
Yeah. This rook c3 move is such a class move, actually. I mean, you know, finding this move shows a lot of quality because bishop f3 is always a move that is going to cause white some problem, but you've just ruled that out. And there might be another move here. Okay, no, it doesn't work. Yeah, just rook a6 is simple. c6 doesn't work, actually, because I think you can just take the rook there, c7, bishop b7. So rook a6 is just simple. You don't need to think too much. Has he played bishop d5? He has. Just put the rook on a6, push your pawn, and you're going to win this game.
There's no other moves. And this is so depressing when you have a lost position and your opponent's winning moves are literally forced. Like, c6 doesn't work because the bishop will stop the pawn. Okay, rook b6 makes no sense because the b7 square is controlled. Literally the only thing you can do here is rook a6. Dante worries me slightly that he's taking a little bit longer than he should, but that's easy for me to say. He's obviously nervous, his hands are shaking. You want to leave yourself with about 2 minutes, though, to deal with an unexpected move. And he's now falling to a minute. Time to make that move, Dante.
Get your rook behind black's pawn and push your own pawn. And also, the black king, you've noted this before, he has played it. I think the black king can be in a bit of a box, you know. The black king doesn't have a good place to go, but the c pawn's just a winner. 1 minute to finish the game off.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner, and he'll have more than a chicken dinner if he defeats Sarge today. That's only part of what he needs to do. He will need to hold with the black pieces tomorrow, which is going to be a very tall order. But even if he doesn't, this will be a huge result for the international master who lives in the U.S. from Namibia. C6, basically a pre-move at this point.
Yeah. Maybe you can flick in a check first, but it does definitely work. And the other thing about winning the first game here, it's so nice because you know whatever happens, you're in tiebreak, right? So you can kind of relax a little bit. It's like, okay, I lose tomorrow, I still get a tiebreak. So I've still got that extra chance in the competition. What's black trying to do? Well, he's trying to take some pawns. I think maybe he realizes he has to give his bishop up for that pawn, and he's going to try to get the G and H pawn. Some chance. It's not enough. Not enough pawns. They're all separated.
Yeah, I think there's about a 20% chance that black pulls off a miracle here, because if you play c6 after rook takes g4, if you play c7 in that position, I think Sarge has cooked up a devilish trap with bishop to c4, hitting and defending the pawn and setting up the threat of rook g1. So white can actually promote in that position, but black will promote with checkmate. So Dante, okay, he goes c6, which is fine, but after rook takes g4, do not go c7. You actually lose the game. You have to flick in. You have to flick in that check on a7, as you were saying.
I mean, let's see. If I was Ivan here, I'd play rook takes g4 really quickly. It's one of those instances where you've got to use a bit of psychology here. You know, there's no point giving your opponent the chance to catch up with that trick. He's got a minute and a half. Just take the pawn, cross your fingers, and hope you get the trick in. And Dante's so close to getting a brilliant victory here. Yeah, you've got to try and set them up right. So take the pawn on g4 and pray. This is the way to do it. I mean, can you go bishop c4 first? Well, it's less tricky, isn't it? As you say, you know, maybe you could try this move. Maybe that's what he's thinking of here.
Yeah, the issue is there. White could even take on a4, I think.
Yeah.
And that would kind of...
That's a simple way of doing it.
Yeah, so maybe king d8. I think king d8 is the other move, but then c7 and the rook can swing over to d8 and dislodge the king. So Sarge, he might also be using some interesting psychology of waiting and making Dante believe that he doesn't see a move. Then he might play rook takes g4 with a resigned kind of air of desperation. Yeah, all of these theatrics, you know, this drama, it can be frowned upon, but that's what you have to do. Like, when your back is against the wall like this, you have to tap into every trick in the book. And if that means a little bit of acting, then you do a little bit of acting.
I'll remember that if I ever play you, Danya. Watch out for the acting. I have to say, if I'm ever in a position where you're acting, I'll be very happy anyway.
Darn.
So,
that's not good. I revealed all my secrets. I hope we don't play again.
You'll get given secrets. Well, the first time was very painful, so I hope we don't play again as well. Crush me. But he's getting also now, look at the time. They're both under a minute and a half now, so this is getting to the crescendo, the key moment of this game, and maybe he is just waiting until he gets very short of time and using that to try and pile the pressure on his opponent. That's another strategy. You know, if you get down to your last couple of seconds, your opponent might be tempted to move quickly, so you use every trick on the book, every single trick that you've got, and he's now going under a minute. Is Sarek.
1 minute for Sarek, and that is giving Dante so much valuable time that he's using to calculate, right? Every second that ticks down is a second that Boykish should be using to try to anticipate Black's move, because you're only going to have 90 seconds. We know how fast that time evaporates when you're on, when you're sitting at the board. But 30 seconds now.
Interesting line given in the chat. Rook takes g4, c7, bishop c4, rook takes e6, but I think it's just bishop takes e6 should be all right for black there, right?
Very pretty idea, but yeah, bishop e6. There it is. This is the moment of
He's
truth.
played it.
Rook a7 check wins the game. c7, I think, loses the game. Or maybe draws, because white can make a knight
Maybe
there
draws.
with check, but you're going to have to squeeze out a draw there with white.
If you want to win this game, though, keep it simple. Check on a7. This is the big moment. As you said, Danya, will he push the pawn? He's under a minute as well. He's double checking his lines. I think he's going to check. He's played so well. I'd be amazed if he doesn't flick the check in here. What do you think in the chat? Will he give the check or will he push the pawn? Pushing the pawn could be a mistake because of this bishop c4 move. A very, very
30 seconds.
crafty move.
Dante changing his sitting position. He's getting nervous.
Oh, he must have looked at this move, though. What did he spend his last minute doing?
That's the thing,
This was
right?
the-
He has
what's
to
he
realize
thinking
that
of?
Saric has an idea. Like, once you realize that black has an idea, you start
What's he
looking
doing? Where's
for
he
moves
going?
like bishop c4. 15 seconds. 15
He's
seconds.
getting nervous. I don't think he's seen it. I think he could push the pawn here.
9 seconds,
10
Simon.
seconds. Wow. He's pushing the pawn. Oh no, he's checked.
he checked. He's checked with 6 seconds on the clock. Oh my lands!
dear.
But it's not over. It's not over, Simon. Now he has to make the cold-blooded move. King takes e2. Do not go rook d7 and c7, which I thought was winning. But again, there's the move bishop c4 in that position.
C4. Bishop c4 is such a big threat, and well, how much time does he have here?
15 seconds.
15 seconds to play this, and he's getting so nervous. You can see it. He's moving the seat. He's under 10 seconds. I think this could go any way, this game.
5 seconds. He's got to move. He's got to move.
He's got to move. Just play.
And
King
what? King f2. King f2. He didn't take the pawn.
What? Why are you not taking the pawn? Take the pawn.
God, bishop c4, and he might lose this game. What in the world was that move?
Did he forget to take the pawn there? Why not take that horrible pawn?
And the game is
That
over.
pawn is just...
This is
Take
unfathomable.
the
You
pawn.
play king takes c2, and black literally has no more ideas. That's it. It's resigned. Rook h7, c7, rook h8. That black has to give up the bishop. This is
just
unbelievable.
This is just nerves for you, Danya. I mean, you get to this position, you know you're doing well, but it starts to get a little bit complicated. You look at the clock a little bit too much. You overthink things. You don't do the obvious move. How's the only way you can lose this game? The only way you can lose this game is that pawn. So take the pawn. But you overthink it.
But look at Sarge. He has to find a tactic. After bishop c4, white has the move rook to f3, which sets up a ladder mate on f8. And in that position, there is a tactic with rook g2 check, but black still has to find it. And Saric, okay, that's a decent move. That's a decent move. And at the very least, it forces white's king back to e1. But I really hope that Saric does not repeat the moves in that position. Although I don't know exactly what he does after king e1, to be honest.
Well, king e1, he can't go back to g4 because surely this time white will take that pawn. I mean, don't give your opponent the chance to play the winning move again. He has gone back. And what else can you do here? Can you go...
I don't know.
Can you go bishop c4 here? No, you can't, can you?
The rook takes a4 again.
Rook takes a4 and there's nothing there, right?
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. 15 seconds for Saric. He missed bishop c4, after which it was white who had to save the draw. I still think white's winning chances here are excellent. Apparently, rook to h4 is the correct move, but that's so hard to play. 2 seconds, 1 second, king c8.
He's king c8. And again, he's now losing. White is now in a great position, but it's just a time scramble now, right? I mean, it is just on the clock. Maybe you switch your rook to the other side now. Something like this.
Yes. A million times yes. Rook h7, c7, and rook h8 should be the winning construction. But look at Dante. Just look at the body language. This is a 3-result game.
Is he? He's flicked to check in, and I think he's just giving himself a bit more time. Saric is repeating the position. Is he going to repeat and take the draw? He can't do that, surely. You've got to play for the win here.
It's possible.
But after rook h7, what do you do against bishop c4 there, though? It's not so clear, is it?
And you have to understand, you have to put yourself in the shoes of someone like Dante, whose every enemy at the door becomes a monster, right? Every mate threat that he calculates becomes outsized in its proportions. And that's why players repeat in winning positions. That minute evaporates so fast. And if he doesn't see a concrete win, yes,
have they agreed to draw?
No. That's just they have another score sheet because move 60 has been reached. I also thought that.
I thought they're shaking hands. The score sheets are being signed. But what happens after this Rook H7, Bishop C4, Danya? If that occurs, if White tries to play for the win and moves the Rook to the other side of the board, what if Black plays Bishop C4? Bishop C4, the key move, yeah.
You might have to play Rook takes H6 and then ultimately sack your exchange on C4, but then Black has that A pawn, which could also promote. I think Dante might repeat here. He's looking at the clock at the board. By the way, Etienne Bacro is about to win his game expected. So this is the only interesting game remaining. 15 seconds for Dante. I think he might repeat.
I mean, it's not a crazy decision because if you lose this game, there's no way back at all. And I think we're getting news that Bacro did win that ending. It looked pretty good for him, but we've got to stay. We've got to stay with this game. And they're repeating again. Is it going to be?
Yes.
Is it going to be a draw here? I think, unless you see the win, you take the draw. Is that free moves? Is that it?
I think it is. And Saric is going to take a little bit of time just to make sure that he can't go king b6, and he can't. And I cannot blame Boykis at this point for not taking the draw. The only thing that really he will be kicking himself for is not taking on e2. That was completely inexplicable.
Yeah.
And this is a huge miss. And all kudos to Saric.
I mean, you can understand why he's taking the draw now. Look at his body language. He's played a very tense game, and he probably realised he was winning. But at the end of the day, you're still in the match. You're still in the match if you take the draw, right? If you lose this game, you're not in. I mean, Saric clearly dealt with the nerves better, but he's also missed some opportunities, right?
He has, and he's thinking,
what's he thinking of? He can't be trying to win this. It's time to take the draw now.
Yes.
Come on.
So here's 1, here's 2, and after he plays king c8, it's the same position. Okay, he's going to make the move and press the clock.
But
he's
didn't claim the draw.
Dante a chance. Nope.
He didn't claim the draw. So actually,
let me
now
tell you why. Mm-hmm.
You've got to claim the draw. You've got to call. You've got to say draw. You've got to get the arbiter. So if you don't do that, the game goes on, and that means that now there's another chance. If he goes rook 8, would he just play?
He's doing it deliberately. He's doing it deliberately.
But he's looking over there.
Deliberately. I think Saric thinks that if Dante plays rook h7, he's going to play bishop c4, and with White's nerves, he's going to lose the game. He's giving Dante a chance.
I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to go rook h7. I think he's looking over there.
I don't think so.
I reckon he will. Come on, Dante, play it. Be brave.
It's too daunting.
He's entering the inferno. Oh no, okay. He's gone for the draw. I was maybe more hoping it than it was a rather daunting move, wasn't it, as you say? Daunting prospect. Is he going to claim the draw now, or what's going to happen? Or is he just going to... No one's claiming the draw.
No one's claiming the draw, and
he's still playing on.
It's so clear with what Saric is doing. He keeps tempting Dante into going for the win. If nobody claims the draw, I think there's an obscure rule where the arbiter steps in after like 5 or 6 times, but that never happens. This is such an obscure situation where neither side claims the draw that I don't know what the contingency is. This is insane. Yeah. It's 4-time repetition after king c8. Which side is going to claim that draw? There's an arbiter circling the board. They're talking to each other.
You know what happens if it's a 5-time repetition? They get 3/4 of a point rather than half a point, right? That's what they're going for, the 3/4 of a point each, which makes no difference at all because they're on the same score. But if you're Saric now, you must realise that playing your king back is so risky. That rook h7 move is just winning for White. And as you say, White's always got the draw in hand, though, as you point out, Daniel, because you can always give your rook up for the bishop. There's no risk, yeah? And rook 8. They've taken the draw. They can at least chill out now.
Goodness.
Oh, should we just see on the board there if he's going to point to the h7 square? Did he see the winning move? Dante? And was he just not brave? Well, you know, I don't know if brave's the right word, but he just didn't want to play it at the end. You can see the tension though so
devastated,
much.
But he's devastated. He knows that was totally winning. Pure nerves. Literally, that had nothing to do with chess. Dante would play King takes e2 in a hyperbolic game. He would play it in his sleep while skydiving in any circumstance other than the circumstance he found himself in today. But that is what the World Cup does to you, and that's why we watch, right? It's because it's not only what's happening on the board, it's what's happening in the players' minds. And the higher rated players, they just have more experience. And the only way to deal with those butterflies is experience. There's no other way.
Yeah, well said. And probably the most exciting game at around there, Sarek versus Dante. And actually, to be fair, a high-level game. They played very exciting chess. It was great to watch. And we're going to now just have a look at the other results that have come in. And there have been a fair few upsets, but generally things have gone in the favour of the higher-rated player, especially on the top boards. You can see there all the results in favour of the higher rated player. And let's just remind everyone, this is only day one. The big guns, the big seedings are coming in the second round, but all the players will have to face off again tomorrow. And tomorrow, of course, is going to be even more exciting because, you know, they're fighting to level the scores, a lot of these players, or to win the match. And, it's been an exciting day chess, Daniel.
It has been a scintillating day, 5 hours plus. This is a grueling event to play. It's a grueling event to commentate, but I feel like this has been an inaugural day that we could not ask anything more from. We had so many close games. We had upsets. We also had textbook displays by some top players, and how much of a treat it is to watch a lot of must-win situations tomorrow, and then tiebreaker the day after tomorrow, and then the emergence of all the top guns in the second round of matchups. Simon, this is going to be an epic event. Fasten your seatbelts. Doesn't matter what time control you prefer. The World Cup is going to be one to watch, and today was an absolute pleasure. It was a pleasure to commentate the games with you, and it's already light outside. I don't know how these 5 hours passed so quickly.
It's starting to get dark here outside. It's a bit of a different time. But yeah, always a pleasure to commentate with you, Daniel. And let's just have a look at the schedule, everyone. So everyone at home, you can work out the days you've got to watch. And I would obviously recommend watching as many days as you can. But round one is still going on tomorrow. So we will see who goes through. And then if tie breaks are needed, which they will be in some of the matches, we're going to get that the day after. And round two is where you get the likes of Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru, all these big names coming into the competition. It is a long competition. It starts on July the 30th and ends at the end of August, when we will have 3 players going through to the candidates. So a big result. But a massive thanks for watching. And me and Daniel will be back at other moments in the competition. And Daniel, what are you going to do now? Have you woken up enough? Are you going to go and play some bullet chess by any chance?
I am going to take a 4-hour nap. Maybe I'll have a Subway sandwich first. I'm going to spoil myself.
I think you deserve it, Daniel. You go and spoil yourself with a nice Subway and some chilled time. And yeah, thank you everyone for watching. And also the commentary will be back tomorrow at the same time. And we hope to see you all then.
Thanks.